All right, so good morning. So welcome back to your biology lesson. So today I'm just going to continue with classification as promised. So now we are starting with part 2 of classification. The first thing you need to know, if I were to continue, is you should be able to tell me in your examination why is this thing called classification important in science. So that's where we are going to start with. So the importance of classification, if you can remember, I said classification is the grouping of organisms into groups according to their similar structures. So why is that important in science? So first of all, remember, I said, for example, the scientific name of a human being is a Homo sapien, right? We call them Homo sapiens. Every human being in the world is known as a Homo sapiens. So why is that important for science? Remember, scientists, they come from different parts of the world, and each scientist has a different language. So with classification, it helps scientists communicate globally. It's a global language. Every scientist in the world know a Panthera leo is a lion. That's the first importance of classification. It allows global communication, or it enables, let's say, it enables global communication among scientists. So it enables global communication. Secondly, it helps us to keep track. To keep track has to do with the location. It helps us to keep track of organisms. Where do they live? What do they do? How do they adapt? And so on. Organisms. And thirdly, it helps to show evolutionary. Evolutionary has to do with how do these organisms, where do they come from, their ancestors, everything. Helps to show evolutionary relationship, which is a good thing, because you want to know the ancestors or the root of every organism in science if you are studying biology. And it also helps us identify unknown organisms, helps identify unknown organisms. So scientists discover a new set of species almost every day, because when an organism is not matching to the groups or levels of classification that they currently have, they automatically decide it's a new organism that has been discovered. And lastly, I don't know if this last point is, you only write this last point when you are out of points to write. So classification also helps us sort organisms in order, of course, based on their features. All right, good. Now, after you do that, we go to the next section of classification, which is the levels of organizations. How do we organize organisms in order? So basically, we call it the hierarchy classification system. First, at least be able to define the word hierarchical. It's supposed to be hierarchical, but I just made it short. Hierarchy classification system. What is this about? So it's basically when you are putting organisms in groups, from large to small, like these groups, grouping organisms from large to small. When I'm saying from large to small, I'm talking about the groups from a larger group to a smaller group. And then you break it down into smaller groups based on features. You become more specific to smaller groups based on specificity, smaller groups. Larger to smaller groups. Let me just write the smaller here. Good. Now these groups of classification we usually call them taxa. Yes, we call them taxas, and that's where the term taxonomy comes from. You will see this word sometimes in your examination. They can ask you to define the word taxonomy. Taxonomy is basically a branch in biology that deals with identifying. It's all about identifying and classifying organisms in groups. That's it. This is not a must, no, but they can ask you to define. Taxonomy is all about classifying and identifying. Good. Now let's move on. Now, what is the next thing? There are 7 levels of classification that you are required to know for biology. By levels of classification, I'm talking about we have 7 different groups that helps us identify the organism. So there are 7 levels. There are usually 8. Actually, there are 8. But on your level, we only study the 7 ones, the 7 main ones. So the first one, we have the kingdom. That's the first level of classification. You start from big to small. The kingdom is the biggest group or level. So there are 4 main kingdoms that you need to know. I'll get into details later. So the first kingdom, there are actually more than this, but the 4, I'm just going to focus on the main ones that you are studying for this matter. So we have kingdom Animalia. If an organism is an animal, it belongs in the kingdom Animalia. If it's a plant, it belongs in kingdom Plantae. If it's like mushrooms, they belong in this kingdom Fungi or Fungi. And then we have kingdom Protista. These are microorganisms. Okay. Then after kingdom, you have its kingdom, and then you have after kingdom, the second level of organization is a phylum. Now, phylum is basically we focus on body structure of the organism. These are just examples. Please, I'm not saying kingdom is all about these ones only. There are a lot of kingdoms, but these are the main ones that we focus on. These are just examples. Now, for the phylum, we focus more on the body structure. It's all about body structure, the phylum, smaller. So the main phylums in biology that we're going to study on. Now, for example, let's say you are classifying a human being. So you come here, first you start with a kingdom. To which kingdom do humans belong to? A human being is an animal, so the kingdom is Animalia. Okay, after you are done with the kingdom, you go to the second part now. You go to the phylums. Now there are 4 main phylums, not the main ones. The phylums are a lot. Again, I'm going to repeat this. There isn't a fixed number of phylums because every day scientists discover new species and therefore they keep on adding more phylums. There isn't a fixed number, but the main ones you are going to focus on your level, we have phylum Chordata. Chordata, these are basically animals with backbones. And then you have phylum Mollusca. These are the snails. They belong to this phylum. They have slimy bodies, organisms with slimy bodies and shells. They belong there. We have phylum Arthropoda. These are organisms with segmented bodies. They have antennae and so on. Phylum Arthropoda. The next one. I apologize if you can't see. I'm going to try my best here. And then we have phylum Annelida. These are earthworms. Phylum Annelida or annelids. And then we have phylum Nematode. Now this one is not really going to be studied on your level, but these are basically roundworms. They belong to that phylum. Good. Now you have kingdom, phylum, and then you move on to the next one. This the next level of organization after phylum. You have class. Okay, now let me quickly bring this back. You start with a human being. A human is an animal. It belongs in this kingdom. You go to the phylum of a human. Now I said phylum Chordata, these are organisms with backbones, right? So the phylum of a human being is phylum Chordata. So you keep on classifying. Each time you get more specific on the features. Here is just general. Is it an animal or a plant, fungi, protista? And then you go on. Does it have a backbone? Does it have shells? And so on. So human beings, they belong to this phylum Chordata because they have backbones. Good. Now let's move on to the next level of organization, which is known as class. So after phylum, we go on, we focus on a more specific feature. These are organisms that are closely related based on features. Everything here, you are just focusing on a more specific feature as you go down the groups. So the main classes you are going to study is class Mammalia. These are the mammals, the ones that feed their young. We have aves. Aves are the birds. We have Reptilia, the reptiles. Class Reptilia. We have Amphibia. These are the main ones you are also going to study in this topic. You have class Pisces. Okay. Now these classes here that I just listed down, these are the classes that you will find in what? Remember this phylum here, phylum Chordata. It is further divided into these classes that I just list down here. Now if you want to focus on phylum Arthropoda, the classes for phylum Arthropoda are as follows. The ones that you're going to study, we have class Insecta. These are the classes that you find in phylum Arthropoda. We have class Arachnida. You have Crustacea, the crabs. You have Myriapoda. These are the centipedes now. Now, please, for goodness sake, you are not required to memorize the different kingdoms, the different phylums. Maybe only these ones, these important ones here. Yes, these are going to be in your exam, but that's another section of the topic. But for this section of the topic, you are not required to memorize all the classes or the phylums, all these things. No, the only thing you should know is that there are 7 levels of organizations, and the biggest one is kingdom, and then you go to phylum. After phylum, you go on to class, and then after class, there is another one, which I will write down here. The next one is known as order. Now, what is an order? Order here, we just focus on more specific features. Just like I said before, as you go down the groups, you are focusing on a more specific feature. So the orders, you have the primates. These are a few examples of orders. There are a lot. The primates, these are animals with grasping hands like us. We have grasping hands. We call them, they belong in the order known as primates. We have the carnivores, the meat eaters. We belong in Carnivora. And we have the rodentia, the rats. Rodentia. These are rats. They have strong teeth. And then we have a lot more orders, but I will just, for the sake of keeping the video short, I will just end here. All right, now, okay, after I'm done, I'm going to try and classify a human being in these 7 levels. Now, after order, we have family. That's the next level of organization. So what do we focus on family? We have the Hominidae, we have the Felidae. Hominidae, these are animals with large brains, they have no tails, their eyes face forward and so on. But you don't need to know all those stuff. That is just for AS level. For ordinary level, you just need to identify the levels of organizations in order. That's it. So we have the Felidae, the family. These are cats. We have the Canidae. These are the dogs. I'll just leave it there. Canidae, those are examples. Like I said, even the families, they are a lot. I'm just giving you guys a few examples and telling you what this is all about. Now, second last, we have the main one that we studied under the binomial system. We have the genus. So I'm going to write down the genus. The next level of organization is genus. The genus, there are a lot. Actually, we have the Homo. These are genus. These are organisms with large brains and they walk upright and so on. And then we have the Panthera. These are the ones that roar. They are hunters, they roar. We have the tigris. Sorry, not tigris, the canis. Yes, the canis. These are organisms that like running and hunting, and they have a strong sense of smell. And we have the felis. These are the small carnivores. Felis. Small carnivores, they have claws that go in and out and so on. Okay, now the last one, the species. After genus, the next level is known as species. So the species, we have the sapiens. Now for the species, we are more specific here. If an organism is able to mate with another organism of the same species and then produce a fertile offspring, that's when it can be a species. We have the sapiens, we have the leo, we have the tigris, and so on. I'm not going to focus much on that, but I just wanted to give you an idea of what you are dealing with. Now, please, the students, they usually don't like this topic because it seems like it's too much. Please use your syllabus. Your syllabus only wants you guys to know how we organize these 7 levels of classification. It starts here with kingdom. I gave you a few examples. And then phylum. And then after phylum, you have what? Kingdom, phylum, and then you have class, order, class, order, family, last but not least, genus and species. So what you're required to know is just know that it starts from the bigger group and it goes all the way to the smallest one. So kingdom is the biggest one. So most of the time in your examination, they can give you these 7 levels of organization in, like, let's say mixed up, and then they ask you to arrange them in order from the largest to small, or from the smallest to big to the biggest one. So if they say from the smallest one to the biggest one, the smallest one is the very, very last one, the species. So you are going to start with species, genus, and then you go backwards. But if they start from the biggest one, you start with kingdom. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, and so on. So how do you memorize this? To make it easier for yourself, we have we have a sentence in biology that we memorize, and the sentence goes as follows. So we say King, it is wrong with my pens. So we say King Philip came over for ginger snacks. Okay, so that's how you memorize the levels in order. So it's kingdom, just the first letter, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. That's how you memorize these levels of organizations. So I hope that's clear. Just as I said before, if you have any questions, please feel free. From here, we are going to start with the next section of the topic, which is the dichotomous key. I will save that one for another video. I don't want to make these videos long. I just want you guys to be able to enjoy the subject. I cannot just make a video for 1 hour. I'll break it down into sections for easier revision. So on the group, on our WhatsApp group, I will screenshot and send you guys question papers on this part of the topic. Thank you very much.